Well, hello there. Hopefully you can still hear me, and now you should be able to see me. We did have a few technical issues before we actually did go live when me and Brian, who's waiting in the green room just there, my camera for some reason kept kind of shutting down. But so far, touch wood, things seems to be okay at the moment, but that's just to give you the heads up just in case. But listen, folks, it's fantastic to see so many people here already. The chat room's already filling up, and I could see even before we went live, there was like a record number of people for my lives of people waiting for us to go to get this thing up and running. So obviously Lightroom is something that people are really interested in. So we've got a lot to go through tonight. I know Brian, who's waiting, has got a ton to share with you. And I'm guessing there's going to be a load of questions. So this, more than anything, tonight is your chance to just fire in some questions in that chat room. I won't be able to go through all of them. I'll highlight some of them so we can get Brian to answer some of them. But it might be that some of the questions you ask could be great content for Brian to cover on his own channel, on his own YouTube channel. So don't, just get the questions in there and we'll see how we go. But before we get to Brian, let's just do a little bit of admin. First of all, those of you who probably haven't seen it, there's a video that I posted almost a week ago. It's a pre-recorded video about ProPhoto RGB or Adobe RGB. And I can tell you, it's generated quite a bit of interest. It's not to say you should be using ProPhoto or you should be using Adobe RGB. In the video, I had a chat with Dr. 𝐂𝐫, who is kind of like Dr. Color. And he kind of gives his view about ProPhoto RGB and why you might not want to use it for your editing, but you could use it for archiving. So I'd highly recommend you take a look at it. That is in, I'll put a link to that in the description once this video finishes. And the last thing, always a little bit of a request, is that you just subscribe. I really wish YouTube would change the wording, or Google would change the wording, not to say subscribe, just to say follow. Because I don't know about you, but when you see the word subscribe, you think there's some kind of monetary exchange. Believe me, there isn't. Literally, you're just clicking subscribe, which means you're going to follow, which means whenever I post new videos or we're going to go live like we are tonight, then you get notified of it. And that's it. And it also helps people like me and Brian build our YouTube channels. So it's kind of like an early Christmas present that would be very much appreciated. But listen, before I bring Brian in, I just want to give you a bit of a kind of a background on him. I've got something here written down, so I'm just going to read this out for you. Brian is I've known Brian for a good number of years now. He's based out in Palm Beach in Florida. He's been involved in the photography industry for a good number of years now. And it's got written down here that he spent over 15 years helping photo enthusiasts improve their photography skills. Brian's also the creator of Lightroom Everywhere, which you'll see a lot of tonight, an in-depth video course, weekly newsletter, podcast, and a live stream show. It's designed for Lightroom users who want to edit on their device, streamline their gear. Again, you're going to get to hear a lot more about this tonight, and take better photos with any camera, and put in brackets, especially the one in their pockets. In addition to growing his photo education business, Brian has been fortunate enough to work for several industry-leading technology companies, including Google. I saw that Mike Stapleton in the chat there mentioned that. That's the last time he saw Brian, was in the Google Hangouts. Sony, Wacom, On1, and Topaz Labs. So before I bring him in, let's just play a very short video to give you a bit of an idea of what Brian's going to be covering.
If you want to streamline your photography workflow, manage and edit your photos on any device, and have access to your entire photo library no matter where you are, my Lightroom Everywhere course is for you. It's the only course that'll teach you how to manage, edit, and share all of your photos on all of your devices using Adobe Lightroom's cloud apps. My name is Brian Matiash, and I've been using Lightroom's desktop and mobile apps since they were released. And I can tell you that this is the future of how you will work with your photos, whether you've taken them with your camera or your smartphone. After you register for the course, you'll get immediate access to all of the content. We'll start with an overview of the entire system and workflow that I've perfected over the past 5 years, and then we'll dive deep into all of the amazing features that Lightroom offers. You'll learn how to use Lightroom on your desktop, tablet, and mobile devices, and you'll also learn how to use your cloud storage most efficiently. My Lightroom Everywhere course has over 9 hours of easy-paced lessons that you get instant access to. You can start and stop anytime, you can review the lessons at your own pace, and you can even download them to your computer for offline viewing. You'll also have the ability to ask questions in the course comments and get direct feedback from me, whether you're new to Lightroom or you're thinking about making the switch away from Lightroom Classic. This course has everything you need to help you take full advantage of this app. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just scroll down to see all of the wonderful testimonials from actual students about how this course helped give them the confidence to say goodbye to Lightroom Classic completely. Also, be sure to check out the video FAQ section further down on this page to learn even more about this course. Thanks so much, and I can't wait to help you start using Lightroom everywhere.
So that's Brian. So I suppose now we better bring him in. So Brian, here we go. Now, is your volume on? I don't know if it's automatically going to turn on, but is it definitely on? There we go. And there's Brian's website details. I'll put more of those. I'll put those details as well in the actual description part of the video. And Brian, just so you know, a very mutual friend of ours is here as well. We have Matt 𝐂𝐨 𝐞𝐨, Matt K. Hi, Matt. Thank you so much, mate, for joining us. Yeah, I had a feeling you'd be there, knowing this was about Lightroom.
Yeah, he texted me about an hour ago.
Oh, right. Okay. Jolly good. Well, listen, mate, obviously, you know, we are going to be covering quite a bit of stuff here, but with this being about Lightroom, I think it's fair to say for everybody out there that you are one of the early adopters and champions of Lightroom, which probably most people are going to remember or think of as being Lightroom Cloud. Now, obviously, there's been quite a few changes with that now, which would make now people... The excuse of kind of saying, I don't want to store stuff in the cloud doesn't really kind of have much standing now, because obviously we've got local storage, which I want you to show people more about. But I'm going to play devil's advocate. I know we talked about this before we went on air. And I'm going to tell you straight out, I am a Lightroom Classic guy. Because although I do play around in Lightroom, there are a few things in Lightroom Classic that aren't in Lightroom that are kind of, I guess deal breakers is too hard a word, but you kind of know what I mean. And I want to just bring those up so you can see these and everybody else can as well. And folks, if this is just something I've just written down here, there might be some other things that maybe you think of. If you do, drop them into the chat. We can kind of come to those as well. But these are the things that I'm initially thinking of. The printing one, that's kind of just there for the sake of it. I mean, I don't like printing from Lightroom Classic anyway. I don't think it's very good for that between us. There's no export as PNG, which I thought was really, really surprising. Really surprising that we don't have export as PNG. And there's no open as layers in Photoshop. Now, I want to just show something to do with the open as layers in Photoshop. So what I'll do, Brian, I'm going to jump over to my desktop.
Sure.
And let me just bring up Lightroom. For those of you who don't know what open as layers in Photoshop is, let's just say now, because I do a lot of this when I'm working on my mobile images, and especially the seascape ones. So let's just say that I had a number of images here. I'll just choose 3 of them for now that I wanted to blend together. I've done a little bit of editing in Lightroom. I want to get them into Photoshop so I can blend them together. I've got the option in here of going Photo, Edit in, and then we've got Open as Layers in Photoshop. And when I click on that, if I then go over into Photoshop, what you'll see is happening is it brings them all in so that they're all in the same document, one above the other. And I know that's one thing that we don't have in Lightroom. In Lightroom itself. Right. So that's one of the things I want you to kind of think of these, put these in your head so you're kind of aware of it. We've also got no swatch in color grading. I'll explain about that later on. And no tethering, which, yeah, well, there you go. And no slideshow option. But let me just go over to yourself, because I know that you've mentioned there is, let's just get something out of the way. First of all, you have mentioned that there is something to do with maybe a slideshow. Will you be able to show people what you mean by the slideshow thing? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So if I sort of share your screen then, and give us an idea of what the workaround would be in Lightroom, first of all. And then I want you to talk a bit more about Lightroom itself.
Sure thing. So as far as the slideshow, there is not a native slideshow function in Lightroom the way there is in Classic. However, there is a slideshow function. There are 2 things you have to do first. The first thing is you have to have your photos synced to the cloud, that is what I am a primary advocate for. Like, I love the new local tab, but I advocate for getting your library in the cloud. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you have to create an album that is shared using Adobe's gallery share. So really quickly, let me show you, Glenn. So I've got this album. I've had this album, I call it to share, for as long as I can remember. This is where when I finish editing a photo, this is the album, or you can even think of it as a collection that it goes into, and there's over 2,000 photos. So you can share an album, and basically it creates a unique link that you can share with anyone in the world. And when you do that, if you open that link in a web browser, you have this gallery, and there is a play button right up here where if you press that, you can go into full screen view. It is a slideshow. It is a fully functional slideshow. It's a basic slideshow. I'm not going to pretend like it. You don't have controls over like the duration of each slide, but it is a slideshow that you can use. So I want to just, when someone says, "Oh, they don't have this function," sometimes it's just it might need a little bit of a workaround, but I think for the most part, Lightroom has everything that a photographer needs to organize, edit, and share photos. Like that's just that has always been my point of view. It has gotten even better with local, but yeah, that's kind of, if you need slideshows, that's how you would do it.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for quickly diving in for that. I guess you know why I got you to do that first, because my camera did drop out. Weird stuff. We're going to sort that out later on. But listen, okay, one thing then, let's just kick this off properly with me saying that I am fully in the Lightroom Classic camp at the moment, because there are functions in Lightroom that just aren't there. They're not there for me to sort of can fully switch over. But what is it? Let's just get this right out. What is it about Lightroom that people are shouting about more now than they have done for quite a while? What is it that's happened to Lightroom that makes people like yourself, and I know Matt as well now, that you are kind of almost championing Lightroom in brackets cloud plus storage, plus local storage? Why are you championing that as the go-to now, as opposed to Lightroom Classic, which so many people, I'm guessing in the chat, myself included, are going to be more used to?
Well, it's partly, I would say mostly, because when Adobe had their Max conference in October a couple months ago, they introduced local browse. And that's where I would say people like myself and Matt, being in this industry for as long as we have, that's not a small thing to do, to put a fully functional file browser that also exposes pretty much the entire editing stack in Lightroom. That was the first and probably almost main nail in the coffin of Classic. Now, giving a plug to Matt's podcast. Matt has a podcast called The Photography Frame of Mind that I've been a guest on several times. And we have had this conversation many times where we talked about the future of Lightroom. And I think, to answer your question, Glenn, we both had a prediction in terms of, we're both unified that we predict that eventually Lightroom Classic, not that it'll go away, but it's going to go into a maintenance mode. My prediction was that it will be within 5 years, and Matt's is a little bit more generous. He's like 7+ years. Point is, from a company perspective, no one can deny that it really doesn't make sense for a company like Adobe to have to manage 2 photo apps that essentially do the same thing. Like, you have to have the engineers for both apps, for Classic and Lightroom. You have to have marketers, you have to have customer support, you have to have QE engineers or QA engineers. That's a lot of me. Let's put all that aside. The confusion that has been introduced for customers between Classic and Lightroom also is a major problem.
Yeah.
Lightroom, one of the reasons Lightroom was created was it was there to address what I believe is the #1 sticking point for you, especially for new users, and that is the catalog. Lightroom has no catalog to speak of. Lightroom Classic does. And that hangs up a lot of people. They don't understand what it is, especially if they want to travel with their photos. It's a mess. So yeah, that's kind of what it is.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm kind of cutting over there because I'm desperate to find out one part of this. And this I know is something that's going to be close to most people's hearts. It's all to do with workflow. We're always really interested in workflow, and we spend so much time, getting to know a bit of software and kind of making our own workflow, which works for us. It might not work for somebody else, but it works for us. Are you able to give us I don't know, an example of how a workflow with Lightroom itself could be. You know, like, I don't know if you've got any images that you'd bring in, but we can imagine you've brought them in, how you would organize them, where they are, and just to show how different it is from what I'm used to and what a lot of other people are used to with Lightroom Classic.
Sure. So
right, cool.
If you look at my desktop here, so I have kind of a really kind of high level workflow. So I have this folder here and it has 127 photos in it. Pretend this is your SD card, for example. Before, with Lightroom Classic, the first thing you'd have to do is import them either into Lightroom Classic, or you can use a third-party app like Photo Mechanic or Bridge to review them. Now, in Lightroom, you have this tab up here called Local, and this is what is the game changer. So this is equivalent to Bridge built into Lightroom. And it is a V1 thing. This was just released in October. But what you can do now is, so this is how I would do it. I would go through this process here where I would just do a rate, review, and purge. I would look through these. I would say, okay, this one, I know that there is a series here of about 5 photos. So I'd say, all right, this one is, I'll give this a 1 star. Oh, and actually, this is actually good. This is a little interstitial that's popping up that's telling you what's happening here. This wasn't here before that I remember, but it's, as soon as you do this, as soon as you make an edit to a raw file, if I go back here and open this photo up just to show you, an XMP file is created. So this is a sidecar file that stores all of the metadata and editing changes, because again, raw files are non-destructive. But I would go through this really quickly. I would say, okay, this is a good one. This one I would hit X, which is a reject. I don't need it. X, I don't need that one. And then here I'd have a few, and I'd say, okay, so this one with the beak closed, I don't need that one. This one and this one, I would give this one a 1 star. I'm literally showing you how I go through this process. Point is, when I'm done with this, what I've done is I've identified at the very least the photos that I do not need to keep. This is a mindset issue. This is a workflow issue that, you know, for me, I beat this drum that we as photographers do not spend nearly enough time auditing our photos and deleting the ones that don't need to exist. Because it used to be, I think, Glenn, like a flex, where a photographer would be like, oh, I've got 500,000 photos in my library.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I get it. That's fine. But if you want to, you know, use a cloud-based workflow, you have to understand that you now have we were talking about this before the show. There is an analog to the film days where there is a cost. Now, the cost for us is not taking the photo. The cost is if you want to store your photos. So just really quickly, let me wrap up the workflow here, because I realized I went on my tangent. But what I would do now is I would go to this filter icon here, and I would go to show me just my rejects. I would select all, and I would delete them because I don't need them. What I would do after that, so I'll just go here, I'll go right click, delete photos, delete. I'll clear the filter out. And then here's what I would do. This is how I work. I select everything. I go to photos. I go to add to album. And then I would have created this. So when I show you this add to album, these are your cloud albums, because the concept of album is not a local concept. It is a cloud-based concept. So basically the way I organize my photos is by year, then by month, and then I would put it in there. All of these photos would get synced to the cloud. And this gives me the opportunity now to further audit and just whittle down the catalog. I don't need to do everything right away, but I think a lot of us can relate to the fact that we are often in situations where we just have time on our hands, and we're either waiting somewhere or, you know, whatever the case may be. Rather than me doom scrolling through social media, which I used to do all the time, and I can tell you personally, for me, it is not a good thing. It is a huge mental tax and an emotional tax. I just load Lightroom. I have all of my photos that I've synced. I can find photos. Oh, you know what? I forgot. I meant to edit this and I didn't. And I edit it, and it's good to go. It's so much, for me, it's a much more productive use of my time. So yeah, that's my workflow. I use local to rate and review and sort. The ones that are left over get synced to the cloud.
Well, okay, so obviously the big change then in Lightroom, and I'll just say cloud so people know what I'm talking about, is the fact that we've now got this local. So really, I guess, I mean, the workflow that you've shown there, that is a workflow that really works for you, because obviously you're within the ecosystem. So you're going to have Lightroom on, let's say, an iPad or maybe on your phone, and you know, with all your stuff being in the cloud, you can access it anywhere, anytime, and you can edit it, and those edits will be affected across the whole of the ecosystem.
Yep.
But again, like I said, workflows can be very personal, can't they? They can be, just we've got all this functionality. We can use it as we see what works best for us. So having the local, do you think? I mean, just that on its own is the game changer for people to move from Classic. Is that what you see as the game changer? Not necessarily the cloud. There's the obvious advantages of that. But do you think it's actually just the local addition now that we've got, which makes the big difference?
Yeah, I mean, it's massive. Just by virtue of the fact that you don't need to manage a catalog. It has simplified the process because, Glenn, with the exception of the ability to stack and using versions and using some AI search, those are the three main things, you have access to everything in the edit. You have access. Let me rephrase that. You have access to everything that a photographer could possibly need to make their photo look great. You have the full edit stack. You have the denoise, the AI powered denoise. You have super resolution. You have HDR and pano merge. You have HDR/pano merge. You have everything. So, but you don't have to worry about a catalog. And trust me, this is not just conjecture. The catalog is a major stumbling block. And the other point that I want to make that we really haven't considered, because you have to take a step back and ask, all right, well, why did Adobe do this? Yes, Lightroom Classic, I think it was 2007, was released, and then Lightroom was 2017, a decade later. Who's the number one growing type of photographer? What type of photographer is the fastest growing?
Yeah.
Most people who use their phones to take photos already have ingrained into their workflow using the cloud. They know they take a photo, it's in their camera roll. Their camera roll gets synced either to iCloud, or if they're using Google Photos, it's a concept they're already familiar with. So there is a ceiling, a built-in ceiling. Photos is not nearly as capable as Lightroom. So for photographers or photo enthusiasts who are looking to graduate, so to speak, to something more robust, Lightroom makes it very easy. There's a reason why in Lightroom there are migration tools to migrate both your Lightroom Classic catalog and Apple Photos into Lightroom. There is a reason for that. It is not an accident. But Glenn, I am sympathetic to people watching. I completely get it. I get it. I'm not trying to. Sometimes I come across overly passionate and sounds like the sky is falling, and that's not the case. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I get it. I get why you're excited about it, because you're seeing the advantage that when it works for you so well, because I know we've talked quite a lot about this, how it just seems to fit into your workflow and your lifestyle and your working life really, really well. When you have something that does that so well, as an educator and somebody who likes to share stuff, you want other people to experience that feeling and that ease of work, don't you? But, as you say, that it's not for everybody. But
correct.
I think it's great. It's great that you will, you are so passionate. I hate that word, but you know what I mean? Passionate about it. There's no other word that you can describe it. Listen, I want to, as you're talking, there are a ton of questions coming in here.
Are there?
And I'm doing my best to highlight
hit the comments.
But there is one here, which we will come to questions a bit more in a minute. We're going to have a break in a short while, but I'm going to post this one up just so that you can see it. And it's from 𝐿Scott-Photography. Can I use Lightroom with local only and not pay for cloud space?
No.
I don't know. You can't. Right. Okay.
No, because, okay, let's do Matt and I have this conversation all the time. Let's just do a reverse logic. Assume this person is a Lightroom Classic user. correct? That means that person has to have the photography plan. Now, they might have the 20 gigabyte plan or the 1 terabyte plan, but in order to get Classic, you need to be on the photography plan. There is a Lightroom only plan, but that is for Lightroom Cloud. So you're already paying for cloud storage. Whether you're paying for 20 gigabytes or a terabyte is the difference. But you can't go to Adobe and say, hey, I just want Lightroom, this Lightroom, and nothing else. Now you can. If you're saying like, hey, I want to just move to Lightroom, you can pay $10 a month, get Lightroom only, no Photoshop, no Classic, and a terabyte of storage. Sure. But no, you cannot just have Lightroom local and nothing else.
Okay, well, just before we take a quick break, and you mentioned storage there, 1 terabyte. We've got a question here or comment here from Fred. Fred's put, how much cloud space do you have? Now, I think I remember you telling me that what you've got, and it is quite a lot. What have you got, Brian, storage-wise?
I have the 10 terabyte plan. But
okay. That's you. That's you, obviously. But I guess the real answer would be is, what do you think would be an acceptable storage plan, amount of storage for the workflow that you've got, where you aren't storing hundreds upon thousands of, hundreds of thousands of images on there? What do you think people could get away with for having storage? Or is that really like a how long is a piece of string question?
No, it's a totally fair question. And storage is one of those things I will, without a doubt, be the first person to acknowledge as the complaint, and a legitimate complaint. I would say 1 terabyte is actually massive. 2 terabytes, I think, would suffice for most people. It does require paying an extra $10 a month on top of the plan you already have. But and this is something where I really do hope, and I have no insight on this, but I would love to see Adobe get more aggressive with cloud storage pricing, because Lightroom, if I understand correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Glenn, is the only app that actively uses that Creative Cloud storage the way it does. Like Photoshop, doesn't, and so yeah, because Lightroom is such a driver of it, it would be great for Adobe to make it more affordable.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There's going to be quite a few questions, and I think that's what the majority of this is going to be. This little live. So what we'll do, we'll take a break, and then we'll dive into some of the questions. There's a few comments as well, but I'll try to bat off the horrible ones.
That's all. Right, that's all good. Let's bring them on. Bring them on.
Yeah. Okay. I won't. I'm tempted to say one now, but I won't. So let's have a quick break, and then we'll come back and go from there. Alrighty, so there, just a short video from BenQ. That's the monitor that I'm using, just so that you're aware, the 272U. I've done a video on it, but we can talk about that more another time. But Brian, what I'll do now is I'm going to dive over. I've highlighted some of the questions and comments that have come in so far, which kind of grabbed my eye. So let's just quickly go through them, and we'll just kind of freestyle this. Kirsty McLeod, she's put, no collections. I'm major on collections. Okay.
So if she's talking about collections, I will presume she's talking about smart collections, because collections is just a collection is just an album. So if you do have if you are using Lightroom Cloud, you're syncing your photos to your cloud, then an album can be a collection. Just like that album at the beginning of the stream that I showed you, that where I have all of my finished photos. I mean, it's a collection, just like any other collection, but it's called an album. Smart collection, yes, 100%. I would love to see Adobe take smart collections and marry it with AI, which is one of the other, I think, things that doesn't get nearly enough love with Lightroom Cloud is the AI search. What I would love is to create a collection or a smart collection that's waterfall photos, because Lightroom, you may not know this, but Lightroom Cloud, when you sync your photos to the cloud, I can search for a photo. I can search for the qualities or content of a photo and never apply a keyword or something in the file name or in the metadata, and Lightroom will identify it. So how cool would it be to have a collection that, as you add your photos to the cloud, any photo that has water that's detected of a waterfall is automatically added? To me, I would love to see that. But if you're just talking about collections and you are using cloud, then you kind of have that with albums. So I kind of challenge that. On the local side, local is just a file browser. Literally, you create a new subfolder, you'll see that in local. So yeah, that's kind of the way it is. I do know, I acknowledge smart collections. That I'll acknowledge all day long. It'd be cool to have a smart collection that shows all of your 4-star photos, so or some other filter. But yeah, that's my answer to that.
Okay, cool. There's obviously there's lots and lots of questions. What we won't do is spend all night going through these, but I'm just going to try and cherry pick just a few for you, mate, because
sure.
I think these are going to be genuine questions. Because like when we were speaking right at the start, I thought that the biggest resistance, I guess you'd say, that people will have to move completely over, because I sometimes think there's a bit of there's something for having both. Do you know what I mean? There's pros and cons for having both. Would be the cloud storage and internet connectivity. That's the two things that I was thinking. But it's interesting looking at some of these comments coming through. Ones I didn't even consider. We've got one here from a guy called Andy, and Andy's put that obviously Lightroom itself has zero support for plugins as well. And obviously people do use plugins a lot. You know, they do, and more these days. So do you know? Have you got any kind of like inside knowledge as to that? As to would that ever be possible?
I mean, I don't. Even if I did. I am under NDA with Adobe, so I won't discuss anything. But I acknowledge also that plugin support is a huge thing, not something that I'm not going to be like, oh, no big deal. What I will say though is you can send your photo to Photoshop, and presumably that vendor, like Topaz Labs, is probably the most popular example. They have Photoshop plugins for their apps. The other thing you can do is export the photo and open it up in a standalone mode of that third-party plugin. Those are workarounds. I fully acknowledge that having plugin support, I see no reason why you couldn't. Partly because it's the proof of concept is there. You can send a photo to Photoshop, so why can't you send it? I suspect if and when that support comes, that the third-party plugin developers will need to update and create the plugin for whatever the architecture or infrastructure is.
I guess if the way that we know, having worked with Adobe's software and done stuff with Adobe for a number of years, just like Matt has as well, I think now when something isn't in that particular software that you're using, I think you have to kind of also accompany it with that word yet. Because, so many times, things have been added that we didn't expect. And the great thing is now, with the way that this creative cloud system works, is I do champion that, is the fact that we now don't have to wait what used to be, was it like 18 months, before we used to get updates. Now, I mean, this week alone, I think we've seen I've just, my camera's dropped out, I noticed there. I think this week alone, we've had 2 updates from the beta version of Photoshop. And obviously now we're at 25.4, I think it is. So Yeah, that's something to consider there. Now, listen, let me just jump onto these questions here because I know people are going to want to know this. Look here, you can save. Yeah, good comment here from Stephen Gotts. He's put this here. You can save locally now, so it doesn't matter how much cloud space you have.
Right. That is the primary difference. Is that before, if you wanted to use Lightroom, this version of Lightroom, you as soon as you added your photos, they start syncing to the cloud. Now you could have paused syncing, but this is, I think, Adobe's overture to Classic users who want to become familiar with Lightroom. And the thing that we shouldn't gloss over is you can now pick and choose individual photos, groups of photos, or albums to sync to the cloud. So it's not before it was kind of an all or nothing. When I kind of grew up with Lightroom, I synced everything. And what I actually did, and I know this is not necessarily, everyone can do this. I just went to my local Starbucks. I mean, I remember this. It was kind of fun because I got to know the baristas, and I would sit there because at that point, and I still think it's still the case, I believe Google still provides Starbucks with their Wi-Fi, and so it was blazing fast. And so I would come over with my giant RAID drive, like no joke. I'd connect it, and I'd sit there for several hours, and I did that until it was done. Now, I've since whittled down, and I continue to whittle down my library. That's, again, for me, one of the beauties. I can sit in my living room in the evening with my wife, just kind of have the TV on, or we have some music playing, and rather than I cannot stress enough the negative impact that just like doom scrolling social media has on me. I'm not going to get on a soapbox on that because it's also a very powerful mechanism for people like us, Glenn. But rather than just scrolling, I just sit there with my iPad or my iPhone, and I just will pick an album at random and do a review of the photos, because I have a lot of photos, and I know a lot of people watching can relate to that. I saw someone saying, "Oh, I have 40 terabytes of photos." I mean, to that, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if that's supposed to be unless you genuinely need all 40 terabytes of photos. That's something that I challenge photographers. That's where I push back on people.
Well, it's funny you should say that.
Yeah.
Because Lucille's put, I have a total of 40 terabytes of data. Tell me what someone like that does. I think I know what you're going to say there.
I mean,
sort your images.
Sort your images, rate, review, and purge your images, because unless you're contractually obligated to maintain those images, I just don't see a reason. I also don't take this as an insult. I don't think that you have 40 terabytes worth of gems. That's just insane. Like I would be amazed. I probably have 200 gigabytes, maybe less, depending I have currently, just to illustrate to you perfectly, I have currently synced to my cloud 132,457 photos, and I have 2,000. So from 132,000, which is right here, I have 2,320 photos. And of these, I can easily get rid of another probably 300 or 400 photos that don't need to be here. These are my edited photos, the ones that my keepers. So the reason why I bring this up is because there is a skill that actually grows you as a photographer by being able to be critical of your photos and determining which ones should exist and which ones don't need to exist. Of course, if it's family photos and stuff, completely different strategy there. I'm all for, if you want to keep your photos of I'm not advocating for that. But like that album of bird photos, Glenn, I'm sorry. And these are my photos. I just deleted several of them live. No problem. Well, to be fair, they're in the clouds. They're already backed up anyway. But point is that we do not talk about this enough. The importance of being able to judiciously go through the photos you took, because our cameras can take 5,000 frames per second, and we all come back with like gigabytes and gigabytes of photos. To be able to go through those and find the best ones to edit, there's a skill there. And to get rid of the noise, there's a benefit there. That is the thing in going into 2024, that's the drum that I'm going to be beating hard.
I think with me, I've kind of, just using Lightroom Classic, I've kind of occasionally, when I've created a new catalog, because I do that every year, I've had a bit of a purge and I've cleaned things up and what have you. And because of the way I work, I tend to, every single image that I work on, I tend to keep, I keep all the layers. I'm just one of these people, I never flatten, I always keep all the layers. And I think some of that is down to the fact that, you know, a lot of what I do is education based, and it's always good for me to be able to open that image up so I can then work out all the steps I did if I wanted to teach a certain thing. And I've got, I reckon, and I take a lot of photos, certainly now more that I'm using the mobile for doing stuff, all the raw files from the mobile. And I reckon I've probably got about 6 terabytes in total. But there are a lot of large files in there, the PSBs, you know, the Photoshop big formats. So I've got those, but yeah, I guess, like I said, it's going to be the cloud storage is one of those things that's going to be the one of the, you know, that's going to kind of be the stumbling block for a lot of people, but also the cost. And when I look at the questions and comments coming in here, Brian, a lot of them are kind of around that. But I want to just again, I want to kind of dive into it. Got a question from L. Scott. This is one obviously you can't answer, but it's an interesting they bring it up. He says, big question, will SmugMug adapt? So I guess that's going back to the plugins kind of thing as well, is it? And also where you can use...
Can you share my screen?
Oh, okay. Let's just come out of there and let's go to there. There you go.
So you do have, again, cloud, this is not local. There is this, if you expand your all photos, there's a connections over here, this connections mode. If you click plus, there's SmugMug right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's blurb, and there's White House custom color. These are the same connections that have been here for as long as I can remember. I'm going to give you I'm going to kind of just deflate the balloon though. It's not especially good. Like, I'm not even going to pretend to say that those connections are really good, but they are there. You know, so asking about SmugMug, it's there. SmugMug, I think, was one of the earliest connections in Lightroom. SmugMug is really good about that. They're always just really good about plugging into different apps. But yes, that's still something where Classic is has a leg up. And so if that connection is vital to you, then I would at least advise you to give it a try. But just remember, it only works with the photos you've synced to the cloud.
Interesting. There's some good comments coming here for you as well, mate. There's a guy called Andy, because again, it just shows that, you know, everybody's different. Everyone has different needs and wants and whatever when it comes to their workflows. But this comment here from Andy's put, I think Brian is correct. Paying for cloud storage will focus on us being more selective with our keepers. Interesting. Okay. And also, I think, was it Old Girl Photography? She's put, I completely agree with the discipline of being selected on what you store in the cloud. Raw images on local drive, final selects in the cloud for me. And that's kind of how I would see it. Do you know what I mean? Because
that's how Matt approaches it.
Not that I'm a tightwad, you know what I mean? But I certainly wouldn't go out and, you know, rattle off hundreds, if not thousands of images if I was a wedding photographer. I'm not. I am not brave enough to be a wedding photographer, but I certainly wouldn't upload those into the cloud or expect to, which is why the local thing has kind of pricked my ears a little bit, saying, actually, I can see the benefit of this. Do you know what I mean? Correct. Because I am starting to use Lightroom more, but obviously I am using Lightroom Classic because of the things I mentioned right at the start, that, you know, certainly the openers layers that isn't there available for me. But what I really like is that my cloud storage for Lightroom, where I'm storing stuff, is nice and tidy. Do you know what I mean? So if I want to look at an album or something like that, it's all nice and tidy. I'm not having to kind of sort it out even further. I can go onto my phone, I can look at a portfolio, I can show people my portfolio when I'm out and about. Really simple and easily. So yeah, I'm kind of really enjoying that.
It's definitely the difference between where you talked about the difference, individualized needs, because again, Lightroom is now it's for a multitude of photographers, where the cloud infrastructure was always something that was more familiar and inviting to kind of the newer, especially mobile first or mobile centric photographer who already was familiar with storing their photos to the cloud. Think about that. That person, for as long as they've used their phone to take photos, just it was ingrained in their workflow that they can access any photo in any album at any time and edit it, granted with probably, pared down editing tools, but still have functionality there. So Lightroom is a very close analog to that. It's a I would say the big brother or big sister analog to something like Apple Photos. The local, again, that is the overture to the classic user. I firmly believe that. And yes, if that's how you want to do it, where you still use local to organize and manage your photos and even edit them and then just sync your best ones, that's great. I somehow, I don't know, through osmosis or something, you guys have to remember this. I was just there, so probably everyone in the comments could be like, I was in the Lightroom Classic, before it was Lightroom Classic, I was in the beta days. I was there with you guys. I've taught on Lightroom Classic for a long time. So I get it. But there was a point where I think it was working at Google and I was on the Google Photos team. That's where I first started doing what I call stress tests with, so at Google, I had 10 terabytes of drive storage and I synced all of my raw files there. And we were doing tests to see how Google Photos would manage processing, not just like processing the files themselves, but the computer vision, the AI that goes into that, because Google would identify the contents of the photos just like Lightroom will. And so I think that's, mate, that's when I think I moved over to the cloudy side, to what I call cloudier skies. And you and I are, I would say, at the tip of the spear, or two of a group of people who are pushing and advocating for mobile photography in a big way. And think about that. We're taking the photos with this device. It's not like the photos are being saved to an SD card that we have to take out of the phone and connect somewhere. No, I can either have them import into Lightroom automatically, or I can just select them from the camera roll and import them, and they're in the cloud. So you kind of have to remember that that's a non-trivial number of users. In fact, in a pyramid where at the top are the power users, primarily classic users, we make up, I would argue, this kind of like a smaller component of the overall user base. And I hate even getting into that mode because most people probably are just like, I don't care. But from a business perspective, and it is a business perspective, it makes sense for Adobe to provide something for people in the broadest base of the kind of casual, mobile, hobbyist prosumer who is like, you know what? I want to do more with my photos, because there is a large component. Trust me, I hear from these people very often. These are becoming my people. And they're like, what can I do? And there's Lightroom for them. So yeah, I mean, that's it.
Okay, cool. I want to get to some of the other points that people are making, because obviously we've talked about the cloud storage things we kind of get. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
The way that certainly you're talking about using it. We're not talking about uploading terabytes and terabytes. So, yeah, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about keeping the best ones up on the cloud so they're then accessible everywhere, I guess, is the advantage of it. The plugins thing we've mentioned, at the moment, that is something that people, do use, a lot of plugins. We can't use those in Lightroom at the moment, but like I said, add that three-letter word yet. That's not to say it won't happen. So somebody else has put here, I don't know what your reaction to this has been. Oh, and by the way, Lee Churchill has said, is there not a power saving mode on my camera? It's on already. I think it's a it's a software issue with what we're using to do the streaming, because every time I run around to check the camera, it's on. So I don't know what it is. It's, we'll get it sorted, but you know, we're getting through. We're getting through. There's a comment here from Andriy Nozov. I hope I pronounced that almost correctly. What about calibration?
Is he referring to color calibration or like display calibration? If he's talking about the color calibration, they are here. If you have to open an image in the edit mode, and then in the ellipse over here, there's the color calibration. This is off by default, and you can see it right here. So there are it's the same.
I think, Brian, he might, and I'm going to jump in here, but I think he might be possibly, because it's so broad what he's saying there, I think he might be referring to this. If I'm in my Lightroom here, my Lightroom Classic, you see how you got the old calibration tab.
Yeah, that's what I just showed you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's right here, color calibration. You have tint, and then the red, green, and blue primaries with hue and saturation for each color channel. But remember, this is off by default. To access it, you have to go here. I mean, yeah, that is one of those things that is more of a power control, like a power user control, but it further illustrates the parity between Classic and Lightroom, and that's the thing. Like I would like to go back, if you want to. The thing you actually showed me that I didn't, because I haven't used Classic for so long. Your color grade swatch thing, I had no idea about.
Oh yeah, let me just dive over to my desktop to show what that was then. So I've got a video talking about this on my YouTube channel, so I'll put the link to that in the description side of things. But what I was showing, Brian, obviously my list here, you'll notice that number 1, 2, 3, 4 says there's no swatch in color grading. And what I'm referring to there is when you go into the color grading section here, ordinarily when you first come to it, you can see each of the 3 individual color wheels here. So you've got the shadows, midtones, and highlights. But when you go to the individual ones, so you get the bigger view here, there's this little swatch. If I just open this up here, this little swatch that when you click on it, what this means is you can then sample colors from within that image, which you can then store in these little swatches here. And what I tend to do with that is when I store those colors, I store them I only use 3 of the available 5 slots, but I'll store a color for the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights. And then you can use that then to try to mimic the coloring from another image onto your image. So you could, like, let's say if you wanted to, I don't know, if you want to get the similar look to a movie that you like, you could go to YouTube, do a screen grab of that movie at a particular point, put that image into Lightroom, and then use that swatch there to sample the colors from the shadows, midtones, and highlights, and then add it into your own image so that you're kind of taking the same look, the coloring from that particular image. I mean, there's multiple ways you can do it, but that's one of the things that you can do in Lightroom, which I just think works really, really well. And like I said, I'll put a link to that in the description of the video.
You see, I see here, this is a common thing that I really am trying to understand the mindset of. I see George saying this feels like a dumbing down, and let me see if I can find that. Really, it was towards the bottom here, and I really, no offense, I mean, you and I, Glenn, you need to have a thick skin here. Like I didn't build Lightroom, I don't make a penny off of it. I just want to help people who are interested in using it use it to the fullest potential. But to say it's dumbing down, I really need to challenge you on that. Of course, it depends on what we're talking about. Like, if not having the book module means Lightroom's dumbing down, then I've got to disagree with you. But with the exception of the swatches in color grading, Glenn, that you just showed me, mate, like I don't know what I'm missing. Like, please tell me. Like, I would love to genuinely know. Like, yes, we don't have smart collections. And for me personally, like, I wish I had the map module because I enjoy seeing that. There is geotagging support in Lightroom. You can add coordinates or city, state, country, and it'll show you a little map. But I like the map module. I don't print. And But as far as editing, like this is the thing, Glenn, you tell me if you disagree with me. I just, like, as a photographer, here's my goal. I want to manage my photos. I want to be able to edit my photos. Like I want to edit them as best as I can. And I want to be able to share my photos. So managing, I can manage. Editing, I have every tool you have so far, with the exception of the swatches. And maybe there's something else. I don't know. I couldn't find it. The workflow stuff, there is a workaround for layers in Photoshop. It's a bit of a manual process, but it is functional. PNG, yes, I would love to see PNG export out, but that does not, I don't see that as dumbed down, because I can export it or open it up in Photoshop and save it as a PNG file. So I'm trying to understand what is it, because this person is not the first person to say it, and I don't mean to pick on you. Please don't think that. But there have been other educators who should know better, by insinuating that this Lightroom is somehow lesser than even the local browse. It is insanely powerful. The only thing really missing is the organization stuff. The editing stuff is the same. So the organization stuff, I'm assuming you're talking about smart collections, and I'm not even going to say collections, because I already explained my thoughts on collections.
Brian, I would see that really. I see that there as a positive comment, to be honest with you. I mean, it's more a case of, because now you know there's a difference. It's not catalogs, it's albums. It's just organised differently. I think that there is just the case of saying this is pretty good, because the editing stuff's all there that we need for most people if they don't do the open as layers and stuff, or use PNG at the moment. It's just another slight sort of change, isn't it? Educational thing to say, oh, I don't need to worry about catalogs now. I don't need to worry about this and worry about that. So I think I saw that there as a pretty positive comment, to be honest with you. So I think that's pretty cool.
I just want to, for me, and you brought this up at the beginning, these comments are brilliant, because it helps me understand, in your own words, what your perceptions are of the app, and if there's something that, because of either it's not something you're aware of, which is completely understandable, guys. Remember, odds are many of you either don't even have it installed in your computer, or you never even launched it, and that's totally fine. That's kind of why like people like me, like you, like Matt, are kind of starting to amp up the signal of Lightroom, because it is actually, that's the thing, it is actually really powerful. I said this to you before, Glenn, before we start. Like, why would I intentionally kneecap myself as an educator, as a business owner, and commit the crime as an educator to advocate for someone to use something that is not good? Like, that's just not something I would do. But what's Andy say? It's not.
Oh, sorry, that Andy said, but it's a really good one.
It's not dumbing down. It's more of a fundamental. Yes, 100%. Oh, Andy, what a wonderful comment. What a. It's a great comment. You know,
but then Stephen's come back with this one. You know, he commented earlier on about the change. Love smart. I could learn to do it a different way, but I really like them. And that's totally acceptable. You know, that's completely fine.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I have to think that we will get something in terms of the smart collection functionality, just because it makes sense. I think it's just because we already have filtrations and search by metadata. Why not create a collection or an album that just pulls that information in? And like I said, marry it with AI. So show me all photos that are green. I want to see every photo that has green in it. Show me all photos that have a bridge in it. Show me all photos of something, you know. Virtual copies, great one. Okay, so virtual copies exists in Lightroom, but it's only for cloud, and it's not called virtual copies. It's called versions, and I have an entire video diving deep, but I can show you, Glenn, really quickly. Let me go here to this. So this photo of a croc. Okay.
Well,
If I go to this,
just get rid of that. There you go.
Okay. So this is an image that I edited. If I hit the slash key, this is the original, and this is my edit. Just an iPhone photo of just a little an alligator. I live in Florida, so these are like as common as dogs. But if I go to this icon here, which is called versions, what I can do is go to named over here, and I can create a version. And I'll say this is a 2023 color. If I can type and hit create. So what I can do now is I can go to the image here, and let's say, you know what, I don't like the S curve that I applied, so I'm going to reset all channels, and I don't know, let's just click on auto and change let's actually convert it to black and white. There we go. I can now go to versions. I can create another version, and I'll call this 2023 BW and click create. And now I have a black and white version, and I have this version, the original edited version, and I have my original photo. This is straight out of camera. The best part about this is that these versions sync to the cloud. That's why it's only on your cloud library. I have access to all of this stuff on all of my devices. Versions is supported on iPad, on iPhone, so I can go on my iPhone later and call up this black and white version and continue editing it, or I can create a whole separate version. Some people are like, well, I don't like to, I'm okay with starting an edit on the iPhone, but I want to finish it on my larger screen. I totally get that. You can save an iPhone, so I can say like create version, I'll say iPhone to edit. So I know that this version was edited on the iPhone, but it still needs to be edited on the desktop. And when I get home, this version will be waiting for me. So virtual copies, let me be the devil's advocate, Glenn, for myself. I'll tell you what I don't like about versions. There is no way, but looking at this right now, there is no way from the grid view to identify that this version, and yes, auto versions is fantastic too. Again, check out the video that I've got on that. But I wish Adobe made it easier. Like if you could, Glenn, if you can bring up the grid view really quickly. There is no way here to see that this photo has versions associated with it. Unlike a virtual copy, which creates a new cell in your grid with a little page curl, which I think is brilliant, here, there is no way. So if I'm in the edit mode, even in the edit mode, I can't see whether there are versions. There's no little tick over here. I have to go in to see if there are versions. So room for improvement, but to say that there's no virtual copy, I disagree with.
Okay, listen, we could go on and on and on. There's loads of questions and comments in here, and there's lots of pros, lots of cons, lots of people are sort of saying, "Look, I get it," do you know what I mean? But it's not for me. So there's lots of that's coming in.
Sure.
One very quick last one before. In fact, no, George has come back. There you go. I apologise for the dumbing down comment. If the Adobe plan is to have Lightroom equal Lightroom Classic minus the catalog, okay. I do use plugins. What happens to presets? So that's
presets are here.
Presets are here.
I mean, George, I apologize. I feel kind of I didn't mean to. It's just that the comment struck a chord because I've seen that. That's probably one of the most common things is people take the opinion that Lightroom is somehow dumbed down, and I want to kind of dispel that rumor because I don't agree with that. Here's the thing, guys. George, to your comment. And Glenn, I want to be mindful of the time too. If you're waiting for Adobe to turn Lightroom into Lightroom Classic, I think you're going to be disappointed. Like if you're waiting for 100% feature parity, meaning everything that you have in Classic to be in Lightroom, I don't see that happening. What I do see happening is the very best of Classic being distilled into Lightroom, and as George said, without the catalog. That is the key differentiator.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Well, listen, You probably noticed in the green room there, Brian, I'm jumping back and forth trying to get this camera to behave itself. I'm going to finish with one last comment, which might mean me going off again, but it's just this one from here from Ken Walker, who's put, what about colour labels for images? Is there anything colour labels for images? Because people use those for their organising.
Yes. Yes. No. Correct. You don't have color labels. And if you were to do Lightroom's catalog migration, the classic catalog migration, what it would do with color labels is it would convert the color label into a keyword. So you can filter and search by keywords in local and in cloud. The key difference, and you can argue that's the whole point of color labels, is in classic, when you apply a color label, the cell gets shaded with that color. So visually, you can kind of quickly see. You don't have that. Color labels is not a thing. I don't know if it'll come, but you have stars and you have flags. You have pick and unpick and reject. So you could use color labels as keywords, but if you rely heavily on the visual cue of the color label, you are correct. That is not there.
Cool. All right. I think we should end it there. All right. I think we should end it. I was asked by Stuart in the chat there if I could post your YouTube channel, because I'm looking at it now to my left-hand side, and there is a ton of videos about that where people will be able to go through. And I know, although you've got your Lightroom Everywhere course, which is available now, I'll get you to say something about that in a moment, actually. There's a ton of videos that you've got also breaking down certain parts of, Lightroom, in brackets, cloud / local, on your channel as well. So we'll get you to, I've put that link in the description. I'll also include it in the description part of the video, sorry. But is there anything else, Brian, whilst I go and turn my camera back on, is there anything else that you want to say just to kind of wrap up about the Lightroom thing, anything to do with your Lightroom Everywhere?
The thing that I would just recommend is install the app. Install the app, go to the local tab. Don't pretend the cloud tab does not exist, and just familiarize yourself with what Lightroom has, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And just do it as a thought experiment for yourself. You don't have to worry about Lightroom Classic being decommissioned anytime soon. But I think it is a good idea to dispel your own myths and your own kind of, if you have a misconception about what Lightroom can and can't do. And then if you still have questions, ask them by all means. But go in it with an open mind. If you go in it saying, well, I've got 5,000 terabytes of photos and I can never possibly store them, I'm not advocating that you have to store your entire photo library. I'm just advocating that you should take advantage of the benefits that cloud-based photo management offers you. I'm not saying you have to do it with everything.
Cool. All right. Well, listen, I'm gonna kind of close this off. I think you've done. I think you've definitely, your enthusiasm for Lightroom Cloud is definitely there, and I've got it. I play around with it. I do find it. There are so many things about it that I prefer. For one thing, I like the layout. For me, it looks more modern. It's more appealing.
Yes.
It just seems to flow better, and dare I say, it actually appears to be quicker. When I'm looking through images and working on images, it does seem a lot quicker. So that I definitely like. But like I said, with my list, there's only a couple of things in here really that are really stopping me from completely going over. I understand about I wouldn't be putting terabyte upon terabyte of images up there. The fact that they can stay on my hard drives local to me here, which is fantastic, and I'd only put up my best ones up on the cloud, means my cloud storage is going to be minimal. So, but there are definitely things that I would like to see over, but I get it. For people who don't do exactly what I do, it's definitely something worth looking at. It really, really is. And I know Matt, I don't know if Matt's still around, but Matt, again, he's probably one of the last people I thought would have moved over. But he really advocates the use of Lightroom, and he's just showing as well there's a different workflow for it. But the cloud storage is, cloud, the use of cloud, the way everything kind of works across each other, there's no escaping it. It's like AI. It ain't going to go away. It's going to be around forever. So, Brian, I want to say thank you We've been going for a bit longer than I expected, but and thank you for kind of realising I was having a few technicals where you knew you were going to have to keep talking while I was diving in and sorting that out. But folks, again, thanks so much. Obviously, there are loads of comments we couldn't get to. I will keep those and I'll pass them on to Brian as well. But yeah, before the camera disappears or turns me off again, we are going to make a move. So Brian, again, thank you very much. And folks, if you can, don't forget, just please, it really helps. Just drop a subscribe. Just click on the old subscribe button. It helps with the numbers, and it's like an early Christmas present. It's not, doesn't pay. You're not doing. It's just literally following. You'll get to know when I've got a new video or a live like one of these coming out. But that's it. I love you and leave you. The camera's still on. I'm going to go while the going's good. So take care, folks. And if I don't see you before, Merry Christmas.